Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today I thought I would show you my favourite books of 2024. Basically I'm going to show you my favourite books from each month. I do apologise that some of these might be a little bit repetitive if you have watched my 5 stars video, but I thought this would be a good way to do a bit of a rundown on like the books that I read each month and which ones were my favourites. Obviously some of them are going to be the 5-star reads that I have mentioned in that video, but some of them aren't because I didn't have that many 5-star reads and a lot of them were sort of around about the same time, but I'm just going to get straight on into it anyways. So starting off with January, I actually had a lot of 5-star reads. In total, I read 11 books, but 5 of those were 5-star reads, which were Us Against You, Yours Truly, Binding and Keeping 13, there's 2, and Saving 6. Out of those 5, I think my favourite would have to be Saving 6. I just love Joy Lynch so much. With the depths of my soul, I would die for that man. I love him so much, he deserves the world. The things that I felt reading this book, the emotions that I went through, the amount that I cried, insane. I just loved it so much. Then in February, I read 9 books. That's 10. 9 books and 2 of them were 5 stars. One of them was Redeeming 6, which obviously follows on from Saving 6. And the other one, which I am going to include as like my favourite book, was Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. This is the 3rd and final book in the Magnolia Park series. This was everything that I could have ever wanted for Magnolia and BJ and more. Seeing them sort of get the ending to their story that they deserved, that they had worked and tried so hard for. Everybody had been waiting for this and I literally loved it so much. It was done perfectly in my opinion. Couldn't fault it. Then in March, a little bit of a slow month, I read 5 books and I had 0 5 stars. But my favourite of the month was probably Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. Honestly, holding that book there compared to the big chunky ones that I've just been holding up, the size difference is insane. And I think that is why I struggle now with like little rom-coms, because you just don't get the same depth. But anyways, this is number 2 in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage. They are cowboy romances, kind of following the same family, the same friendship group, I guess. This one follows the brother of the female main character in the first book. I really enjoyed this one. I really love the vibes. I love the sort of anything that is like found family or like actual family set on a big ranch where they're all having like family dinners in their cute little country kitchen. I'm obsessed with. And like seeing old characters and sort of like getting prepared for new characters and new stories. I will eat that up every time. Didn't quite feel like I was emotionally invested in this couple in particular, but I still had a great time reading it. April again was a little bit of a slow reading month. I read 4 books in total and one of them was a 5 stars, which was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I love this so much. I love the way that Abby Jimenez writes a relationship, writes their interactions, whilst also sort of bringing in personal issues and personal traumas and baggage without making it too heavy and deep, but still handling the topics with care and sensitivity. I loved it so much. Perfect for the summer, perfect for like a cute, easy to read, but still emotionally invested sort of romance. I do want to also give a special mention to Taming 7, because even though this was not a 5-star read for me, I loved this installment in the series. Even though I didn't love the development of the characters and their love story, I still hold this book near and dear to my heart because I love the series and love the characters so much. I'm just disappointed that this was the way that their story was told. But it is what it is. As you can see, this is when I fully entered my Tavern era and I just wanted better for them, honestly. Then in May, I read 9 books and I had 1 5-star, which was Funny Story by Emily Henry. Anything Emily Henry writes, I feel like she has plucked out of my brain and put into her characters. I relate to them and feel so seen by every single one of them that it honestly scares me so much, because I'm like, how do you know me so well? How do you know me better than I know myself? And how do you know what I should be bringing up with my therapist? But it makes for a great read. I am always so invested in her couples. I always buy her couples so much. They just feel so deeply connected and like literal soulmates all the time. So I loved this one. Then in June I read 7 books, but again had 0 5 stars. My favourite of this month was actually an arc, and that is Live Ranch Love. I did read this one on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical book to show you. But this basically is a cowboy romance ex like a wellness influencer. She basically gets given this ranch. She's inherited it, so she goes there to sort of tidy it up to sell and meets this grumpy cowboy. We all know where it's gonna go. I just felt like this was so easy to read. I love a cowboy romance. It's like one of my favourite niche genres of romance. I'll eat it up every time and I love it every time. But I loved the writing style, I loved the couple, the dynamic, the story. It was a good solid read for me. Then in July I read 9 books in total. 2 of them were 5 stars, but they were rereads. I went back and listened to the audiobooks of Binding and Keeping 13. So they were 5-star reads. They're my only 5-star reads of this month. So I feel like they don't quite count. We're not going to count those. But 2 of my other books that I really enjoyed reading this month was Homebound. Again, that was an arc that I received. Another cowboy romance, or like cowboy-esque romance. It's Second Chance. Our male main character is Golden Retriever. He's a single dad. And then our female main character is actually a bull rider. I've never read anything where like the girl is a bull rider, or the girl is like the one that's more cowboy-ish, cowgirl-ish, whatever. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that she was the more sort of like grumpy black cat one and he was the golden retriever. And then another one that I will also give like an honourable mention to was The Caller by Chris Carter. I had been listening to the audiobooks of this series and this one was so good. I feel like I was so invested and involved in those thrillers as a whole, but that one was like actually creepy. Then in August I read 7 books and I had 2 5 stars. One of them was Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. The other one was Play Along by Liz Tom Ford. I did love that series, but this book is just gonna like stick with me, and I would hold this one on sort of like a deeper emotional connection than that series, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, not for me anyways. But this one, I just loved the topics that were talked about and how they were talked about. Womanhood, rediscovering yourself, divorce, grief, falling in love again, being a dog owner. Like, there were quotes in this book that ripped my heart out in the most sort of like nonchalant sort of sentence, like shoving it in a little paragraph, but I was bawling my eyes out. Love her writing style so much, and I loved that this wasn't like your typical love story or your typical sort of romance where they're young and it's sort of fun and things like that. Like, it touched on deeper topics without being too much, and I loved it. Then in September I read 11 books. I had 0 5 stars, but I do have a few that I want to sort of mention and touch on. First one is The X-Files by Jessica Joyce. I had a really good time reading this. It's Second Chance, friends to lovers. They are sort of forced back in a situation where they are expected to be around each other and be civil with each other despite being exes and literally still being in love with each other. I loved it, and I felt so seen by our female main character that I just had to put this in here, because anything that I can like emotionally relate to or see myself in the characters, it's going to be a favourite of mine. Then one of the only fantasy books that I am sort of putting in this video, or that has been high on my list of books that I've really enjoyed this year, was The Crimson Moth or The Heartless Hunter. I felt like I read this at the exact time that I needed to. I did read it on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copy, but it was everything that I needed at the time. It was so fast paced. Yes, it was a little bit predictable. Yes, it was a little bit repetitive, but I just really had a good time reading it. I really enjoyed it, and I am really excited for the second book to come out soon. And then another one that I actually listened to the audiobook of is Loud by Drew Afualo. I love Drew, and I knew that when she was coming out with a sort of autobiography, memoir type piece on girlhood, womanhood, growing up as a girl into womanhood, and feminism and things like that, I knew I was going to eat it up. I will say it was nothing groundbreaking for me as like a 24-year-old woman, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think everything that she had to say, I was like, yes. And I think if I would have read that as like a 14, 15-year-old girl, it probably would have changed my life and like my, not necessarily changed my mindset, but it would have like reiterated what I felt like I was getting into by myself anyways, so I did really enjoy that one. Then in October I read 6 books. I had 0 5 stars, but my favourite of the month was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a vampire werewolf romance. It is actually my favourite Ali Hazelwood book. I feel like this is, in my opinion, her best book, her best work. I'm not a huge fan of her writing style or the way that she writes couples in her other romance books, but this one for me, loved it. Absolutely ate it up. Then in November I read 12 books, but again had 0 5 stars. But I think my favourites of the month, I'm going to include 2 in here. I'm going to include Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, just because I'm not quite sure as of yet which one is my favourite out of these 2, but I thoroughly enjoyed them as a whole. Obviously they are not 5-star reads for me, but I would rate them around about a 4 on average for both of them. And I did really enjoy it. I feel like we are getting further into the series, we're setting the scene, we're building the world, and I'm having a great time reading it. So I'm excited to get further into this. Then this is so annoying of me, I know, but obviously December, we aren't there yet, we haven't finished there yet, so I don't quite know what my favourites of the month are going to be. But I will say I think it's going to be The Assassin's Blade, which is the 3rd, or at least I read it 3rd, in the Throne of Glass series, just because the other books that I have on the rest of my December TBR are all Christmas festive sort of reads, which I never tend to rate very highly. This also wasn't a 5-star for me, but I think this will end up being my favourite of the month. So I'm just preempting that this one will be in there too. But that was a sort of quick fire roundup of my favourite books of the year. I feel like it's kind of nice to see what people's favourite books are that weren't their 5-star reads, because I still thoroughly enjoyed all of these books without them being a 5 stars. I will say that next year I want to find even more 5-star reads. Like, it's my goal for every single book that I read to be like a 3.5 or more. Like, I truly just want to find books that I absolutely love, and hopefully we will do that. So please do let me know any books that you think I will be obsessed with, because I'm always looking to add to my TBR. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye!